Don't fall back to the palace.
Great, where are you going?
To finish what we started.
So at the foundation of our characters are these really believable faces. So one of the things for us that was important was trying to find a way to actually push characters for next gen into a way that had them be possibly more realistic than you'd previously seen in other generations. So we did a process of head scanning characters. We would find, whether it's an actor or a model, somebody that kind of fit the image that we were trying to craft the character after. We would get them into a chair, surround them by a bunch of cameras, and then we would 3D scan their heads. We'd take them back to the studio, we kind of manipulate them to characterize them. One of the cool things is some of the actors in the game actually had the right look for the characters that we were going after, and so we would actually head scan the actor portraying that character, and then you would see them in the game, and it was this really kind of cool thing to feel like, wow, that person that you're seeing in the game in real time is actually the same person who was on set performing, and the resemblance is just remarkably uncanny.
The arc induction lance is 30,000 polys, which makes it bigger than most last generation characters. Galahad, the main player of the game, is 90,000 polys, making them 3 times that resolution.
The cover system actually, being at the core of the game, is something that we really focused on a lot at the studio, and we did a bunch of iterations on it to just get the gameplay to feel right to us. And some of the things that actually we haven't talked a lot about is the way that we kind of came about coming up with the decisions for the circle button to be, taking cover. You press circle, you can get into cover, and the X button is actually something that we thought of as the button to get out of cover or to go over cover. And the reason behind that is actually we played a lot of cover-based games, and we found that it's very much important to know that you're slamming on that circle button, you're going to get into cover, you're going to stick to it, and you're going to stay there. And if that button is the same button as getting out of cover, we felt that it kind of compromised you because you may hit it, and the game may think you want to still go into it or get out of it, and it might be a little bit confusing to the player, and they might detach on accident. So we made the conscious decision to put that on a separate button so that you could be really, really explicit about what you wanted to do.
Before we knew what the PS4 was and it was pitched to us and what we knew what the hardware was, we actually were in full development of the engine before that.
One of the actual defining IP elements of the game is this idea of Blackwater. And Blackwater is a resource that the Knights have harnessed over the centuries that allow them to live a long time. From a gameplay standpoint, though, we've actually put that into the game as an element that lets you kind of get up out of a fight where you're down on the ground and you're hurt and you see Galahad wounded. If you can crawl to safety quick enough, you can press triangle, he'll drink the water, and then there's an X prompt that'll pop up on screen. And if you actually mash away on the X button, you'll see the black sight bar in the corner of the screen start to grow as you're pressing the button. We kind of created a gameplay loop where you can build black sight meters so that once you get to your feet, you can engage black sight through the use of Blackwater. So it's kind of this circular thing that helps players when they're in a troublesome spot get back into the action quicker.
So a large portion of the game was dedicated to transitioning between human and Lykan form, and so that was actually a really complicated problem because you're going from a humanoid to a canine, and the anatomies don't match one-to-one, and so when you're doing those transitions, a lot of research into biology actually had to happen to see, okay, well, how do they evolve differently so that we can kind of match those. So, for example, the heel of the foot turns out to be the knee of a Lykan just because that's what a dog does, and the facial structures are completely different because the teeth line is different. And so a lot of research went into how would we transform between those two different, fairly disparate kind of biologies.
We shot a lot of the scenes in the game down in a studio, mocap studio down in San Diego that Sony had. And when we first started this project back in 2011, the stage was kind of like, it was a decent-sized mocap stage. But as we started utilizing it and building these sequences that the game took place in, we were starting to build virtual sets down there that started to exceed the capacity of their stage. So I remember very vividly one day we came down there and we saw an extension of the stage that made it bigger. And we started shooting, and that helped us a little bit. And then months later, we came back down to shoot additional sequences, and the stage had doubled in size. It was one of those funny things where we kept on joking, the scenes that we keep making, they're bigger and bigger and bigger. Are we going to sometime, exceed the space that they had? They can't expand anymore. And that actually happened on multiple occasions. We'd have to break a scene apart into multiple different takes. You would see almost like a race where people would come out of the pits, change a bunch of things on there, move boxes around, because things like, we take them for granted when you see them in the game, but things like staircases or escalators, when the Knights walk down them, that's actually a scene that was shot in 3 different sets. There's like the top street, they get on the escalator, they walk down. There's the middle, which is a lot of walking, and then there's the bottom where they get to the ground. We would actually have to build something 3 times to shoot sequences like that. So, it's definitely making these games with scenes as big and grand as we have has pushed the bounds of motion capture.
To give accurate character, you need the window to the soul, which is your eyeballs. And so what we did is we actually captured not all, but we captured a series of photos from actual eyeballs already at Dawn employees. And so every eyeball in the game is actually a rad employee, and it might be slightly altered just for aesthetics, like maybe make a green to a blue, but the actual imprint of the eyeball is actually Ready-Dawn employees. We also, it sounds crazy, we actually accurately modeled the eyeball so that the lenses and everything reflect correctly, and so that you see the outer lens and the inner lens and all that, so that people don't realize it, but it's actually pretty important. I think what we tried to do with the weapon, or even just any technology of the Order, was to make sure it's plausible. I mean, obviously, they didn't have micro capacitors and things at the time, and maybe you couldn't have a pocket-sized communication device. You would have something that was much bigger, maybe in a bigger box. And so I think we took some liberties on scale of things. But what we did is made sure that did the technological know-how, was it there and was it present on Earth at that time? Right, and so if there was some piece of technology in India or Australia or North America, did that exist? Can we bring it together? And so we try to apply that to something that is plausible.